phone. Shelley will call everyone's name, so please make sure that you unmute yourself to show your attendance. We will need everyone to please kind of control your own mute and unmute function. That way we can get good participation in the meeting when we get to the discussion items. All right, Shelley, can we do roll call, please?
Yes, we can. Start with Alberto Gutier, Bob Ramsey.
Yes, here.
All right. Brian Smith.
Here.
Chris Salvino.
Here.
Dale Woolridge. I'll just repeat, Dale Woolridge. Dan Spate. I know he's trying to join right now. Deborah Garambe. Here. Gail Bradley is here. Darth Gamer.
Present.
Glenn Kasperzik.
Good morning, President.
Thank you. Heather Miller. Howard Reed. James Hayden. Trying to join too. Jonathan Madam. Don Madam, did you join? Joe Gibbs, that's the vacancy. Sorry.
Hello?
Is that Don Madam?
Hello?
Is this someone signing in for roll call?
Yes. Yes, Howard Reed.
Thank you.
Yes, and also Dan Spate is on the phone.
Thank you, Dan.
And Michelle Preston is on the phone.
All right. Is Melanie Mitros on the phone? Mike Duran. Mike Garcia.
Present.
Neil Williamson.
Present.
Rebecca Harrow.
Present.
Brian Page.
Here.
Bob Costello.
Present.
Rod Reed.
Present.
Sarah Parati.
Present.
Todd Hermiel.
Good morning, President.
Vivian Gellert. You have quorum with 19.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We do have quorum for the meeting. Just a reminder that if you're not speaking, please keep your phone or computer on mute. We appreciate everyone participating remotely for today's meeting. If we did not capture you on the verbal roll call, please email Shelley, or you can send her a message on the chat box on the actual online meeting as well, just to let her know that you are participating. We will make sure that we capture your attendance for today's meeting. For the chair's report, just a reminder on the attendance report. For council bylaws, members missing 2 consecutive meetings will be getting an inquiry from the Bureau as to whether you are still interested in serving. If your contact information has changed, such as phone number or email, again, please send that information to Shelley as well. For a vacancy report, the council currently has 5 vacancies. We do understand that several people have submitted for multiple positions. Obviously, with COVID, some of the appointments have been on hold, so we appreciate everyone's patience with us. But we do have 5 vacancies, including non-governmental employer of intermediate EMTs, hospital administrator for county population greater than 500,000, volunteer medical rescue program, representative from local EMS coordinating system Northern Region, representative from local EMS coordinating system Central Region. So again, we do know that several people have put in for the majority of those positions, We are just waiting for final appointments from the governor's office.
Enter your access code or meeting number followed by pound.
All right, just a reminder, please, to keep yourself on mute. Thank you very much. We are going to go on to the Bureau report next for COVID-19 update. Terry, I believe you're doing this one.
Thank you, Dr. Bradley. I wanted to just give a bit of an update on the Arizona Department of Health Services activities related to COVID-19 and emergency medical services. We have reached out to several stakeholders in the CON world to provide some guidance as we created a task force to collect and distribute financial and cost reimbursement information that comes from federal, national, state, or local resources so that folks have the best information available about funding opportunities and grants. That's a weekly meeting. And I think the next meeting is held tomorrow or later today. In recognition that there has been a significant decrease in access to emergency care by individuals suffering from chronic disease and time-sensitive illness, we are looking to work with the stakeholder community to create some public service announcement, messaging, letting people know that it's safe to visit emergency departments, safe to visit physicians, the importance of keeping your medical appointments and the importance of accessing 911 for time-sensitive illness and injuries. Those PSAs we're actively working on those here in the department, and they could be out as soon as the next 10 days or 2 weeks. In the background, we have been working to identify agencies that are experiencing acute shortages of important PPE, and then looking to see if we can't identify methods for some temporary resource allocations in short term. That seems to be less of an issue as the market has repopulated a little bit with PPE, although it looks like gowns still are quite a bit in shortage. And then a final project that we're working on is that we're helping to provide COVID positive information to first responders, mostly using their PSAP or their 911 service, so that they have information about address information about individuals who have tested positive for COVID-19 in the last 14 days. It's a bit of a complicated project. The data is not as in good a shape as we would like, but we don't have much ability to improve it at the time, right now anyway. But anyway, that's an ongoing project that we're working to support as well. Dr. Bradley, did you have any additional department or bureau updates in reference to our COVID-19 activities?
Just one other reminder is just about the Battelle system. Julia, who's here helping to coordinate the meetings today, has been working at the state level to get the Battelle system in place for any healthcare institution, clinic, doctor's office, hospital, EMS agency, or fire department that would like to have their N95s processed and disinfected for reuse. That system is free of charge for any agency. So if you have any interest in participating, we are starting to see quite a few EMS agencies starting to sign up across the state. That process is available on our website. We also have the EMS specific COVID webpage that we've been trying to put all of those COVID specific links that are really specific to EMS and 911 dispatches together in one resource for everyone. If you go to the main Bureau webpage, at the very top of the bullhorn, you'll see a link to the EMS and 911 COVID webpage, and that will take you then to the specific documents that are EMS related.
And then Dr. Bradley, if it's okay, I'll just go ahead and give a brief update on rules if I could.
Yes, please. Thank you.
In your packet, you should have a timeline for rulemaking that we've been trying to keep up, keep up to date. The previous work that we have done with Article 7, Air Ambulance Service Licensing, and Article 8, Air Ambulance Registration, has allowed us to move that project forward, and we anticipate releasing a draft rules sometime later this month or the first part of June. We've delayed moving that forward simply because we wanted to make certain that as we began work on Article 9, the Ground Ambulance Certificate of Necessity, that we wanted to make certain that any cross-pollination between these three rule sets was captured in both sets so that there'd be conformity between them. You all will remember that late last fall, we sent out requests for ideas and challenges associated with the Article 9 CON rules. We collected that information and have been working here at the department to put that in a straw man format. We had to take about a month and a half off that process as COVID became an all-consuming activity here at the department, but we are back online, and we hope to release a first draft or the straw man draft of the Article 9 rules in July. Our goal is to have a good working draft of those rules in place before legislative session begins next fall. And once we get a draft of those rules out, we will go through a repetitive and set of meetings with all stakeholders so that they can provide comments and guidance on as we move those draft rules forward. Does anybody have any questions for me, either about the department's COVID activities or the Article 9 or our rules updates? All right, hearing no comments, Bradley, I'll go ahead and go on mute.
All right, thank you very much, Sherry. Next up is services section update. Ben?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you, Ben.
I just have a couple things that are not COVID related. First, we have a couple more dashboards that have been in the works. This group had previously seen the trauma Tableau dashboard. We are adding additional years of data to it. Our hope is each year we will be able to add each September's, the previous year's data to it. And we're starting by going back a couple years to make sure it works. In addition, we're creating a falls dashboard and a motor vehicle trauma dashboard, and then also the EMS dashboard. So we started with some of the reports we had previously made. We're just waiting on IT to post those to the website. So hopefully they will be available very soon. Also, the trauma registry to AZ Peers linkage is finally done for the trauma registry. It should be moved to production this weekend when usage is low, and then we will be producing a document, an instruction manual in the near future on how to actually use it. So look for that very soon, and thank you to everyone for your patience. I know we have been talking about completing this project for a very long time, and so we appreciate everyone kind of bearing with us while we ironed out some of the technical problems we had with that. So we're pretty excited to finally have that one completed. The next one is we are entering the final year of our FR CARA Naloxone Grant. We anticipate having funds available to purchase intranasal naloxone. And we know a lot of agencies are coming up on the 2-year expiration for their intranasal naloxone. So if your law enforcement or EMS agency needs naloxone this year, I will make a link available in the chat box here in a little bit, but we anticipate having funds available for naloxone. So please let us know if you need to purchase naloxone. We also have training available. We know no one wants to do in-person training right now, understandably, and so we are pivoting to make remote training available to agencies who need to continue to conduct opioid overdose recognition and naloxone administration training. So please let us know if you need to do training, and I'll make the link available for that as well. And then finally is my plug for Gov Delivery. It's one of the ways we have to communicate with our stakeholders. We found a small issue where a couple people had signed up and weren't getting our emails. So if you are not getting emails from the Bureau by Gov Delivery and you would like to, please sign up on our website. You can find it at the ADHS, the department website contact page, or if you're having trouble finding it, please email Shelley and we're happy to help you get signed up. And that's it.
All right. Thank you very much, Ben. Last under Bureau report, I just wanted to take a minute to recognize that this week is EMS week, and I just wanted to make sure that we send a big thank you to everyone for all your work you do to serve the citizens of Arizona. I know this has been a very hectic past 3 months, and we appreciate everyone's flexibility. We do recognize that we've put out guidance only to find out within 24 hours that the recommendations have changed, and we've had to put out new guidance, and we really appreciate everyone's flexibility and willingness to work with us. So just a big thank you again. I think this is probably one of the bigger EMS weeks in terms of how different things are and how important our role is within the state. So a big thank you to everyone. All right, next up is standing committee and regional council reports. Rebecca, can you give us a TEPI report, please?
Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Good morning. Okay.
Thank you.
TEPI met back in March, and we went through and did a review of the discretionary reports for 2020 and sequenced how we thought those should be addressed. We also had Julie Vinton provide us an update for the Safe Sleep Work Group. We also proceeded to recognize areas for improved EPCR education for EMS providers with the Cactus Data Completeness Report, which TEPI did approve. We are looking for each line of the report to have a 90% threshold to determine a yes or a no for a standard met. And that's how we realized, looking currently at the data, we have room for improvement, but this is good. We can go back and better explain to our providers what is needed to be documented or why. And with EPCR, it's pretty easy to get that accomplished. In addition to looking at that, the core data element section was increased to a standard of 90% as well. The trauma data elements, that currently is going to remain at a standard of 19%. And we're actually removing the respiratory effort line and removing the blood glucose level line. Stroke data element section will remain at a standard of 25%. STEMI data elements, we increased the standard to 16%. Cardiac arrest data elements increased to a standard of 25%. Opioid data elements remained at a standard of 57.1, and pediatric data elements remain at a standard of 80%. There were no nay votes, so it was a unanimous approval as amended for the Cactus Data Completeness Report. We also had updates from our other members, the Trauma Registry Users Group, the Trauma Program Manager Workshops, and from Ems as well. And that is all we have right now. Our next meeting for TEPI is going to be scheduled for July 16th at 0900. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right, next up, Brian for education.
March 19th, Dr. Stevie Merrill was welcomed on as a new board member to the committee. There are a number of educational training modules that are available on the Bureau's website that were up for review. Those had volunteers that were going to review those and look to see if any changes were to be made rather than assigning them to work groups this go around. And there were volunteers to take care of all of those. The what should go in your EPCR training had some updates to it, and those were updated and approved and moved forward. There's been discussion on the STR guidance and curriculum documents as to what kind of format to have those be available on, and that item was tabled until the next meeting to continue to look at whether we should take those curriculum packages and move them into a format like the PowerPoint presentations that are available on the Bureau website. The next meeting is July 16th at 10:30.
Thank you, Brian. You are up again for PMD.
Thank you. Once again, PMD met on March 19th. There will be a number of drug profile changes in the format that were approved to go forward. They're in a format that's similar to the national package, and those will be moving forward to Medical Direction Commission today for approval. There was discussion about adding high-flow nasal cannula to the paramedic scope of practice, and after much discussion, it was determined that those fall under non-invasive ventilation, similar to CPAP, and therefore we would not have to move that forward as an STR scope of practice. There was discussion on adding dopamine and norepinephrine, and moving those to optional agents on table 1, and that motion did pass to make those as optional agents. There was discussion to remove activated charcoal from table 1. That motion did pass and will move to MDC today. That's also true for nalmefene and the removal of verapamil and vasopressin. All of those did pass and will be going forward to MDC today. There was discussion to remove oxytocin from table 1. That motion did fail, so would not be moving forward. There were changes made to the treat and refer treatment guidelines, and those were approved and should be moving forward, I believe, to MDC today. The next meeting will be July 16th at 12 p.m.
Thank you very much. All right, next up, Regional Emergency Medical Services Councils for Ames report. We have an attachment in the packet. Is there any other verbal report that's going to be provided?
Dr. Bradley, I can give a very brief report. Regrettably, Ames had to cancel their what was to be the 20th anniversary Odyssey conference. So that was a sad event. We, in response to COVID and what we thought were going to be crushing EMS volumes, we did a couple of things. We categorized the veteran, which had not been done in the past. We also, in collaboration with the folks at Dignity, did a temporary categorization of the freestanding EDs in the Dignity network, and that process is evolving. We also, after doing all that, took note of the decree from CMS that they were relaxing their requirements for payment for ambulance services to allow other sorts of destinations for ambulances to transport patients to and still recoup funds. And so we basically suspended categorization for the duration of the gubernatorial disaster proclamation. We continue to meet in committee via Zoom. We had great presentations yesterday from Phoenix Fire regarding airport EMS and specifically what COVID has done to airport traffic. Bruce Barnhart gave us up to the minute primer on Epic TBI, and there was a presentation on Arizona Pulse forms. That's all I have at this point. The rest is as recorded.
Dr. Bradley, this is Roy. I was a little slow on getting my mute turned back on. Thank you, Dr. Gamer. He got everything. The only thing I would add to that is the executive committee has been working on and have developed a process to distribute the money that's being allocated to the region for EMS providers for COVID funds. So we've also been working on the process to establish prioritization and how those funds will be distributed.
Thank you. Next up for same, Sarah.
Good morning, everyone. Specific to SEAMS, we just want to thank our partners in the other regions for the assistance with creating that document regarding the COVID funding. It was certainly helpful to us to use a cumulative document, at least as a guideline, so that we know that we're reviewing and deciding on funding in a similar fashion. So I appreciate the teamwork and the assistance on that. Our next meeting will stay on the same timeline, which will be June 16th, and it will be via Zoom. As we go forward, all of our meeting locations have still been secured. However, we don't project being able to have any of those in-person meetings. So while we decide going forward, depending on the number of participants, or when we decide, we'll send the Zoom invites to each of you and that are in this group, as well as place them on our website so there are no difficulties in accessing it. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Sarah. Next up for names report.
We did have to cancel our May 1st meeting. Had election for our vice chair, and our treasurer, Peter Como, was re-elected to vice chair, and Kim Moore was re-elected to the treasurer position. There is a Northern Arizona Region EMS Council position open, and Vince Martinez was elected to have a recommendation to move forward for him to fill that position on EMS Council. Some of our work also continued with our pediatric symposium that occurred on March 2nd and 3rd. I think we ended up with around 160 attendees, and that went very well just before COVID came along and would have prevented us from being able to continue forward with that. We also have had a provider grant committee meeting that occurred last week in order to distribute approximately $72,000 in provider grants, and that was moved forward to the board for approval today. And our next meeting is not scheduled at this point in time.
Thank you. Rod, are you available for Western Region report?
I am. Good morning. We held our May meeting on the 14th by phone. It actually was a very successful meeting. We've completed our provider assistance for the current fiscal year that we always do, not the COVID-19, but the regular provider assistance actually came in quite a bit under budget, so we have used the remaining funds to help agencies obtain PPE in the region, you know, mostly the smaller rural ones that it kind of took them by surprise. So we've expended our funding for this fiscal year and are currently accepting applications for the COVID-19 provider assistance and have a process put in place for that. And our next meeting is scheduled for July 9th in Pine Lake, Arizona. And still, you know, we're flexible. We'll see if that's an actual meeting or a phone meeting. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Next up, Dale for PACES report.
Yeah, hi, this is Dale Woolridge. I'm on the phone. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. I wanted to give the PACES update. There's really not a whole lot to say with the COVID-related issues we held on our any meetings in the interim. Prior to that occurring, we were actively working on a couple of projects through our advisory component to work on some resources that the council would be able to review at a future date. That one we initiated was primarily related to safe sleeping environments. That will be resurrected and resume as PACES continues their work following our meetings. We will, I'll work with Julia to establish our next standing meeting, and we'll be able to release that announcement to you guys all electronically. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Kat for COVID-19 EMS finance impact.
Yes, good morning. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to present more about the financial impact of the meeting that we've been presenting every week. I know Terry gave a little bit of information about it. And yes, our next meeting will be this week at about 12 to 12:30, so I'll have to duck out a little bit early for that. But weekly we present guidelines and waivers that are published by CMS, and we present this information on a weekly basis when there is information to present, and do upload each presentation to our website. We scroll down a bit to the COVID-19 weekly financial meeting. Everything is there in terms of the agendas, resource documentation, presentation itself, and even a master listing of all the funding opportunities that we have presented to the different stakeholders that we have. And those funding opportunities vary by grants, loans, cost share reimbursement from different institutions such as the DOJ, the SBA, CMS, FEMA, Federal Reserve, HHS, CARES Act, the Bureau itself, and several other private opportunities through different community agencies like the Better Business Bureau. And so I've been spending a lot of time researching what resources are available to help our different stakeholders, grant ambulance, hospitals, surgery centers, been reaching out, tribal entities regarding the different funding that's available and passing that along to them. We also have another presentation next week from SBA. I know some of our CONs have been able to secure the Payroll Protection Program, the PPP. So I have SBA presenting a follow-up next week to provide additional funding regarding the expectations and the processes for some of those grant ambulance providers who are lucky enough to gain that funding.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up for discussion and action items, can I have a motion to approve the EMS meeting minutes from January 23rd, 2020, please?
Motion from May 10.
Rebecca will second the motion.
Thank you. Are any amendments needed? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. The meeting minutes are approved. Next up, can I get a motion to discuss amended and approved, TEPI approved Cactus data completion standard?
Motion for May 10.
Can we get a second, please?
Second from Gamer.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so we will open up, I will give a little bit of information about this. I know Shelley sent all this information out via email ahead of the meeting as well. So I know we've been talking about the Cactus data completion reports for a few years now, and we did initially go through the process of having the EMS committee review the data, make recommendations to TEPI, and TEPI had set forth what they thought was kind of a data completion standard with certain percentages. And that was based on quarters 1 and 2 from 2019, so for the first half of 2019. TEPI met in March. Between the March TEPI meeting and today's meeting, we were able to get the reports run for quarters 3 and 4, 2019. And when we did those reports, what we noted was that there was a change in the data completion percentages when you looked at the first half of the year compared to the second half of the year. And so what we wanted to discuss is one of the things that we've been looking at with Cactus is if we set a threshold for data completion to maintain PEEP status, what would that standard be? And the ask from EMS Council last year was that TEPI make that recommendation. So TEPI did make that recommendation based on the data they had for them for the first half of the year. When we got the data for the second half of the year, the data completion standards statewide had dropped in some sections pretty significantly. And so we wanted to make sure that there was full transparency to this committee before you made recommendations on whether or not to approve the recommendations from TEPI. So that's a little bit of the background information. We wanted to put that forward first. I know that there has been some questions, and I know Sharon brought up some questions at the STAB meeting, so I know I'll probably open up to her first. Sharon, if you're available to provide some of those questions.
Hi there, yes I am. So the questions I had brought up earlier were basically, what does the Cactus data collect or provide that the ARS and APPEARS data does not? And what I understand is that it is just a subset of the PEERS data itself. And then my second question was, what is the purpose or intended use of the data? And what I understand is just to offer a comparison for a singular agency to see how they're doing compared to the rest of the agencies in the state. And feel free to correct me if I had any of that wrong.
That is all correct. And you said it more succinctly than I think I could have.
Okay.
So we definitely wanted to get this group's thoughts and input on this. I think historically what was discussed with Cactus is Cactus data completion standard used to set criteria for premier EMS agency program status. And so that is something we definitely wanted to make sure that this group had all the information and data available to them to make a kind of valuable decision in regards to that.
This is Bob Ramsey. Go ahead.
I will again, voice my concerns about some of the data point collection pieces and how they interact or interface with our own local, regional, or statewide politics. For example, we have, the report clearly shows a low adherence to the capturing the race on the individuals, and I know for us that would be frowned upon in our political community to say, to put that in a questioning algorithm when we are on an EMS call. So I think the group needs to be careful and conscientious of those political measures that where we're collecting one or two things that perhaps boot us out of a premier status opportunity. So that's my concern, that we vet those very well first. And again, I'm new to this committee, I'm new to the conversation, so maybe that's already gone on and I just missed it.
This is Bob Ramsey, and even though you're new to it, you're right on target, actually. I guess I have a couple observations. The first one is you were very clear to say that one half of the year was had dropped off compared to the first half of the year, but it would have been nice to see what those percentages of that drop off is before we made a vote that said, hey, this is the standard for a premier agency. The secondary thing is that I'm a little bit concerned about how, even though this is supposed to be a subset of the peers, I think it's not just a subset. I think it's actually part of the same set. And so it would be nice to know what part of the previous set by number was already in the previous one and what that percentage was. So we'd actually, because I'm a little confused about where are we coming from, where were we at, and how practical that this is in terms of, because what we don't want to do is discourage the premier agency to keep enhancing itself. And so we want to make sure that it's a driver instead of a report that actually diminishes the ability for people to participate. So maybe all my questions are not founded, and that may be the case. It's just that on face value, I'm very, very concerned about the different areas of the state, the different way the fire departments have to do some of the stuff, and the way in which the data points change, or is it changing in a very a good manner? So anyway, those are my observations, and I apologize if I've got too confused about it.
No, I appreciate your comments, both Sharon and Bob. So definitely in the reports that have gone out to the question that was raised, I'll address the first question, which is the percent changes. So when we looked at the two different reports from first half of the year to second half of the year, we went through kind of line by line and then each data element. So core data dropped from 87% to 82%. The trauma data went up a tiny bit, actually, from 19% to 23%. Stroke data stayed the same at 25%. STEMI data, we were at 0, so we couldn't drop lower than 0, but we did see that percent completion actually still drop, but obviously the overall completion standard could not drop lower than 0. Cardiac arrest data elements, we went from 10% down to 5%. Opioid-related data elements were stable at 57% for both halves of the year, and pediatric data elements went from 80% down to 60%. That was the biggest drop that we saw. So thank you for asking that clarification piece. So those were the reports. The recommendation from TEPI, which was again based on the first half of the year. If you're on the computer, you can see what's being projected right now. They had recommended that the core data elements be a suggested completion standard of 90%, STEMI 16%, trauma 19%, stroke 25%, cardiac arrest 25%, opioid 57%, and pediatric 80%. I think I can definitely address the first question. The second piece of the other part, Bob, that you brought up, I think this is for this group to make a decision on your recommendation. This is really where the Bureau views the EMS Council. This is your role to make your recommendation to us, what you would like us to do. So I certainly value your input, and I'll open that to the rest of the committee as well.
This is Bob again. So my last comment would be, would it hurt not to move this to a standard until the next meeting so we can see the impact of what's going on right now? And because it would be bad if the impact of the COVID would have an effect on the way in which people are doing data, which then would hurt them in a premier agency, when in fact Arizona is such a fantastic premier EMS system, and I'd hate to artificially give it a black eye.
I completely agree with that. I think that's my concern as well.
This is Rebecca. I agree with what Bob and Sharon are saying. Because of the unusual circumstances over the past few months, I think this may be a good thing to just continue to watch and monitor and see what's going on before we put it in concrete, so to speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Bradley?
Yes, go ahead.
I concur with the previous opinions. I think also what would be useful is just a better understanding for everyone on exactly if you become in arrears with reporting certain of the data elements, how that affects your premier EMS agency status going forward. How bad does it have to get before you get your primary EMS agency status revoked? For those who are aspiring to become primary EMS agencies, do you have to have 100% compliance with the completion standards? Some information to that effect, and that could probably just be done in a narrative to the group before next meeting or during the next meeting. Sorry.
Yeah, so definitely good questions regarding this data. So one of the issues that we do have is trying to make sure that all the data collected. Some agencies, I think most agencies now it's real time getting imported. Some agencies there is a lag of a couple weeks, so they do kind of at the end of the month. But these data reports are done kind of very far after the actual close of the year, and that was one of the issues that Vatsal and her team worked really hard with, kind of streamlining all the processes to actually run the reports. So when we ran the reports for first and second quarter of 2019, those were run, I believe, around the December-January timeframe to prepare for the EMS committee meeting. And then the second half of the year, so third and fourth quarter 2019, will run just after the TEPI meeting in March. So again, several months after that timeframe. So when these reports are completed, there is a lag time between the events. So certainly any effects from COVID-related things, we probably wouldn't see until the report around December or January of the end of the year timeframe.
And I think that I echo everybody's opinions here, or I hope I would, that these suggested completion standards aren't draconian in any way, and we should at least aspire to some of the thresholds. It's just kind of to get your head around why we're not performing better, and what can be done to float the collective ship higher, and then institute the standards and make it incumbent upon PAP agencies to reach those standards at some point in the future where we kind of know why we've been deficient.
I know Anne has worked with agencies. So the reports do go out. Anne is able to track who accesses their reports. And I don't know, I think Anne, you are on the phone. You can maybe give a report on what % of people or agencies have accessed the reports. She has worked extensively with agencies who have noted that their scores were not where they wanted them to be, and it's helped them work with their vendor to improve their scores. So one of the things that we definitely recognize is we are here to help, and so Vatsal and Anne are excellent at helping agencies improve their scores.
This is Anne. I'm happy to meet, I really am, with any agency that wants to reach out, or, obviously we probably meet over the phone at this point, but I go over any questions they have, any issues they want me to help them address, or just explain where everything's coming from.
Do you have an estimate, do you know by any chance how many people access the first and second quarter reports for the first half of the year from 2019?
I haven't checked lately, and I'm happy to rerun it and have that information available. Off the top of my head, it was not actually a very large percent of the Premier EMS agencies. I'd say there were probably about 20 that checked it out of the total.
Thank you. So just a reminder, the motion on the floor is to potentially approve the TEPI approved tactic data completion standards that were put forth. They're currently projected on the screen. It sounds like some of the discussion is to not vote on that at this time. But certainly if there is other discussion or input from this group or committee, what you would like us to do with this report. Again, this report is really up to you in terms of what you would like from the Bureau of Emergency Trauma Systems.
This is Bob. I'd like to be able to make a amendment to the motion to table this motion. If I don't know the proper procedure to do it by telephone. So, but I'd like to table the motion for approval.
Second that motion. Gamer.
Thank you. So we got a first and a second to table the motion.
I certainly agree with that.
Is there any further discussion before we take a vote?
This is Rebecca. I support tabling it for this meeting, but I don't want to keep kicking this can down the road. We need to really help ensure our EMS agencies are doing thorough documentation and collecting the data that's required. So I agree tabling it for now because of the unusual circumstances over the past few months. But I just don't want this to keep getting tabled and drawn out. That's my only concern. Thank you.
Thank you,
I
Rebecca.
agree with you. Yeah, agree.
All right, if there's no further discussion, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of tabling the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, hearing no opposition, that motion is tabled. Thank you very much. All right, next up, we wanted to discuss the regulatory impact of COVID-19. One of the things that we do recognize as everything has changed so readily over the last 3 months is the effect on the overall EMS system. Chief Mullins, if you can take this one, please.
Thank you, Dr. Bradley. I wanted to just spend a few minutes discussing some of the topics that have floated to the top as the state has experienced COVID for the last 2.5 months. The Bureau and the department made a decision early in this process to position itself in a way to provide as much assistance as possible to the healthcare providers and the healthcare response industry in Arizona. And so our instructions to our staff have been, we're here for technical assistance and support, primarily during COVID-19, and our regulatory activities, while still important and necessary, need to be managed in, with that as a perspective. There are several external factors that I wanted to discuss, as well as a number of internal factors. All of them are things that we're just keeping an eye on. I'm not asking for any specific action from this discussion, but I just kind of want to raise your guys' awareness of things, including, and this affects the emergency department world and the trauma world a little bit more than EMS, the potential impact of the stay-at-home orders and retail closures in reference to possible decreases in the Indian gaming funding that supports emergency departments around the state and level 1 trauma centers, the impact of reduced 911 traffic on our trauma centers, the impact of decreased motor vehicle traffic on the EMS Operating Fund. EMS Operating Fund, as you know, is the single source of funding for the Bureau of Emergency Medical Services, and it's the source of the funding that goes out to the 4 EMS regions for their provider grants and education reimbursement. And we've seen a a decline in that fund over the past several years, and we anticipate that that decline may be a little bit more dramatic this year, although I have no data at this point to point to. We've watched with interest the increase in the use of telemedicine around the state as a viable option, as a potential viable option for EMS as we move forward. And then again, this is more from the trauma side. The redesignation of trauma centers is something that we're going to have to work hard to monitor. The two biggest regulatory impacts here at the Bureau, however, are on the EMS education system and on the EMCT certification system. When the colleges shut down, when the EMS education programs were shut down, when colleges ended face-to-face instructions, we had approximately 450 students who were at some point in their education cycle. Most of them were towards the end. And so we applaud the work of the training programs and to look for alternative ways to get students past that final threshold, and then towards education, and then towards the testing. You probably all recognize that Pearson VUE largely shut down their national registry testing because most of those were housed in community colleges. We are seeing a slow reopening of some Pearson VUE testing sites around the country. I think we have one site that's up and running here in Arizona, but we are also watching with interest the change that just went in place this week from the National Registry of EMTs, which is allowing EMT at home, EMT, and AEMT certification testing in concert with Pearson VUE, but that can be taken at home. For courses that have not yet begun, we are glad to see that COAMS has allowed broader use of high fidelity simulation for part of the education process, and we're also seeing some opening up of clinical and vehicular stuff around the state, mostly in the rural areas, and we are hopeful that our community colleges will be open for business, albeit I'm sure it's going to be in a different format. But we hope that by fall that we'll see some opening up of the new EMT, AEMT, and paramedic education. We're not seeing a lot of refresher courses, although we think that that's probably just because the market is low and it's just folks are busy on other things. We think refresher courses will automatically pick up as things get a little bit, as time passes. On the certification side, I asked my folks to do whatever was possible to ensure that we maintain the pipeline of EMCTs that are coming through for certification. That's been aided by a decision that the National Registry made to allow for provisional certification for those individuals who passed their didactic test but have not had a chance to take the hands-on test. I'm using my term, I think there's a better term for that. And so we have at this stage, I think, certified 7 EMCTs using the provisional pathway. We've had a lot of individuals who have recertified normally, and then if we have folks that are coming in with some sort of a hardship, we have a plan in place to work with those folks. On the CON side, the process has not, COVID has not had an extraordinary impact on the CON activities. We've had some CONs submit for renewal early on our air ambulance inspections. We work closely with the provider to ensure that our inspection won't inhibit their ability to do their important work, and that goes for the ground ambulance services as well. And then we just make certain that it's done in a safe way so that everybody is comfortable with that process. We've seen, I think, predictably an increase in the number of general rate applications. And so we certainly will our CON staff will be working hard over the next year working on those. And there have been some challenges for any of the CON activities or other cases that require hearings because the Office of Administrative Counsel has moved to telephonic hearings only. And we've also noticed that there's been some additional delay in getting publications through to the newspapers when there has been a notice of waiver. Vehicle inspections are largely going as they have been in the past. We've, I think, made accommodations for a few EMS agencies and one air ambulance service, but that is working relatively well as well. Base hospitals have been not significantly impacted by COVID. In fact, they've actually asked us to stay on the certification time frame. Our last rulemaking around base hospitals increased their period of certification from 2 years to 3 years, so we have significant time already available to us. The only thing that we're kind of anticipating a problem with is a shortage of ACLS and ATLS and PAL certifications, and that probably will be reflected in our trauma centers as well. And finally, in reference to the data collection, we've seen some slowdown in some data submissions that are required by statute or rule, by rule, but overall that has been hasn't been significantly impacted by COVID-19. I kind of just wanted to have this discussion with you also so that you kind of understand the things that the Bureau is trying to keep an eye on and monitor. We, like you, have not been through this process ever before, and we just want to make certain that we maintain things as steady as we can so that when we can get back to more normal operations, that we thought things through in advance and that we can do so in the smoothest way possible. I think all of us are concerned that we've got a long way to go before we can say we're back in normal operations. And so we ask for you all to proactively reach out to us and provide suggestions or ideas or bring information to make us aware of problems that we aren't aware of, and just communicate as much as you can with us, and we'll try to do the same with you. That's the end of what I had to say, and I'm willing to take any questions.
Yeah, Terry, this is Bob Ramsey. I just wanted to ask you a question. And you hear rumors about the fact. Do you have some indication of the impact of the loss of resources on the street because of the available resources on the street at all? And I just wanted to ask that question about that. I'm always concerned about the availability of resources. So.
Thank you. That's actually a great question, and it's something that's very much on all of our minds. I have been and will continue to be looking. Well, let me back up. We have noted that EMS agencies and hospitals and other organizations that rely upon acute care or regular medical care have noticed a significant decline in volume, and that's been reflected in the hiring practices of hospitals and other healthcare facilities and EMS. across the state. And so that's something that's very much on our mind. We are, and that has driven my request to Catherine to set up the financial task force so that we can make certain that we share as much information about federal, state, national, and private foundation financial aid that is available to EMS agencies as possible so that people can make informed decisions. And if there is money on the table, we make certain that we take advantage of that. I pushed for and was able to obtain funding that we're putting out through the 4 EMS regions for some cost reimbursement for EMS related to COVID preparation that is retroactive to January something of this year. And it's very broadly written, so we're excited to get that money out to the providers. And that may help offset some of the challenge that they're seeing. And I will be salt in the wound of here at the department, looking for any sort of funding that I can to push back out to our community, our stakeholders, to kind of help with this challenge. You know, I don't think any of us anticipated that we would see a decrease in volume with COVID-19. So it's caught us all by surprise. Perhaps some of you predicted it. I hadn't foreseen that. But anyway, that is on our mind, and we're going to work hard on that, Ms. Ramsey. All right, well, that's the end of my report. Thank you, Dr. Bradley.
Dr. Bradley, may I please make a comment?
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank all of you at the Bureau for your efforts and what you've done to support our agencies through this time. Someone has always been there to take the call, answer the question, communicate with us. And I know that not all agencies are operating this smoothly. And I just wanted to recognize you all for it. As an EMS agency and provider, we thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate the input.
I support Becky's motion and for all the gratitude from the EMS Council.
Ditto. Thank you.
Ditto.
Here.
Next up, we have a motion to discuss and approve the creation of a bylaws update work group. Just a reminder that we are due for an update to the bylaws this year. Historically, what we've tried to do is bring representatives from the 3 statutory committees together to work in updating the bylaws to make sure that they update simultaneously and consistently. So if I can get a motion to approve creation of a bylaws update work group, please.
Motion for me. I make motion. Second.
Can we just get the names for the first and the second, please?
Maytem. Bob Ramsey.
Thank you very much. And all those in favor of creation of a work group, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. We just need to see if there's any volunteers who'd like to participate in the bylaws update work group. You can either let us know on the phone today. You can also email Shelley, or you can also let us know in the chat option online as well right now.
Maytem volunteers.
Okay. Dr. Maytem?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Any other volunteers?
This is Jim Hayden, I'll volunteer.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that second name. Reed?
Jim Hayden.
Jim Hayden. Okay, Jim.
This is Rebecca. I'll help too.
All right.
All right. Anyone else who'd like to participate, please feel free to let us know, again, by email, and we'll make sure you get added to that list. Next up is agenda items to be considered for the next meeting. You can always let us know via email, either myself or Shelley, but if you'd like anything to bring up today, you can bring it up at this time as well. All right, hearing no items at this time, this is a call to the public. Summary of current events, obviously due to COVID status, I think most current events have been canceled. As things change, we will definitely keep everyone in the loop. Our next scheduled meeting is September 17th, 2020 at 10:30 a.m. We will let you know closer to the time if we feel that that would be an in-person versus an online option. We always have maintained the online option to help participation across the state, but we will let you know kind of closer to that time frame what it's looking like in terms of an in-person option as well. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn from me, Tim.
All right.
Rebecca,
Thank you,
will
everyone. We really appreciate everyone's participation and calling in and doing this remotely. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Miss you guys. Nice to hear from you.
Thank you.